Well, shalom, amigos y amigas, and welcome to Chingford. I thought it was Chingham for some reason. I just learned.
I don't think you can
We're in East London, and I just finished week 1 of opening for Mr. Reginald D Hunter on his Facing the Beast tour. Sitting here with Kash Yusaf. How would you explain yourself to Chief Officer to Reginald D Hunter?
I am Chief Engineer aboard the USS Enterprise.
And third in command.
And third in command.
I like that. And then we're also joined by the lovely and talented and always hilarious Pete Johansson, who's also, you guys have both been guests on my podcast before. So now we've unified our strengths.
Or you've run out of guests.
Oh, man.
That might also see it. So let's talk about Facing the Beast. I don't want to give away the meaning, but I was pleasantly surprised this week when the Beast wasn't what I thought it was, and the way you break it down for the people. What do you want? What do you want people to know before they see the show or not know?
I'm going to tell the truth about something that's very related. When I came up with this for last year's Edinburgh Festival, August, I came up with the title maybe 3 months earlier because there was a deadline and I was super angry at a number of different factions. And I had intended to do the show last August to be on the attack on certain groups. And I just kind of feel like anybody who uses mischaracterization as a debating tactic is my enemy. So, but the last week of previews in July, they were disastrous. In the morning I went to Edinburgh, I had a fight with my director and my daughter. And when I got to Edinburgh, I was tight. And I was scared to say what I felt because I was scared my rage would take over. And they'd be like, ooh, he's funny. He's not funny. And he don't need to work no more. And ever since then, I've been working trying to articulate the beast. And even at the beginning of this last week, I was working on trying to articulate the beast. And then suddenly, like Thursday night, I just got fucking mad and expressed it. And so it's just...
I guess that was the night for me, like, when I was watching, because I watched every night. And I love that you mix it up. Because I always thought people, when they do English theater tours, from English comedians who told me, they go A to Z and that's the show. And then anything else is saved for the next show. But, like, you've actually been mixing it up. And then Thursday, when you explained the beast, I was like, I get it. So, I thought that was beautiful.
Well, I've never done a tour show where I thought, it's perfect. This is set. It's just, if you're a person that's evolving, so is your work. Your work's supposed to do that. And so, yeah, it's like, yeah, and...
But you know, like a lot of English comedians, and it's always the thing, I think that Americans who've never been over here and like are interested in doing Edinburgh, they think that like to do an Edinburgh hour there has to be some bloodletting and some big reveal at the end and structure, storytelling, some show. Your show is nothing but story. And then like I told you on the drive home last night, like after watching you every night this week, like everything you say and talk about is how it personally relates to you. And it's all stories about your life, stories about your family. And then I'm like, I'm watching it last night, and I'm like, oh, that's what I've been doing wrong.
Oh, man. I don't know.
I really love it.
I'm not sure a 35-year vet should have been a 2-year vet and think, oh, my God. Just, oh, man. I'm flattered, but no, baby. You just used to talking to people who just love big laughs and short attention span. England is a country that, you know, has a large swath of people who are intellectually arrogant. And a British audience, just if they are of a certain sort of disposition, they can enjoy your show and not laugh, but they'll go, oh, that's quite good. Very good, very clever. And it's like, when I worked with John Godillo, who was one of my best mentors, we had a saying before we would go on stage. HHB, head, heart, and balls. If we come in, you know, intellectually and authentically from the soul, and just willing to say some, you know, some bold stuff, even if you came to the show not liking us, one of them things is supposed to get you. And it's just, and one of the things I do respect about the British audience, they'll hear you out generally, but if you're not being real, they might not be able to identify it as inauthentic, but they know it when they see it. So yeah, it's just, and America's a different challenge for me because I have to edit myself when I go to America, and I have to get some of my best jokes, and I go, I'm gonna leave that middle bit out because I need to get to the punch fast, and I gotta keep it, and it's a nice challenge. And when I was in New York once, and I did 17 gigs in 10 days, and my first gig I was supposed to do 10 minutes, and I did 11, and I walked off stage, and there was this girl standing there, and she said, "You were on too fucking long." Great set though. And
Just a minute.
yeah.
Wow.
The one and only time I played the Comedy Store LA, who's the famous booker that's supposed to be an asshole?
Mitzi Shore?
No, dude. Crazy dude.
Mr. Mitzi Shore.
Oh, that guy's not there anymore.
Oh, lucky me.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was booked in to do that, and I got there, and he was like really nice. He was like, "How you doing? Coming from England?" I said, "Yeah, thanks for letting me on." He says, "Well, this is the green room, and just this is this, and just really nice." So I went on stage, and I was supposed to do it, like 10 or something like that. I did 13, and I came off, and he says, "That's why comics like you will never work here again."
What?
And I found myself saying something to a booker or promoter I've never said before. "Motherfuck yourself in this club. I have England." And then I'm like, I hope nobody recorded it.
Well, that guy didn't work there anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll try to get in again.
Now's our chance.
That's the great thing about comedy. You just wait a few years, and then usually the person in charge has been changed.
I remember the first time I played home, I did Atlanta, 3 nights.
Where?
This club out in Roswell. There was a punchline.
Laughing Skull?
Something like that.
Yeah.
The first night, half the audience was full of moneyed rednecks, and the other half was full of black folks wearing their Sunday best. And I was struggling. And I did this one joke where I said, I was in this car, this chick in England was driving, and she said, "I need some petrol." So when she pulled up, I automatically got out to pump it. She says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to pump." She says, "I don't need nobody to pump, no man to pump my gas." And I said, "Well, let me pay. I don't need no man to pay for my gas." And I was confused. And then she said, "It's not that you're not being kind and chivalrous, but it's behavior like that infantilizes women." And this black dude in back, he shouts, "Hey man, what's that word again? Infantil what?"
I thought it was going to be petrol.
Inflators.
That racial divide in the audience is just so weird. I played Birmingham, the Stardome. It's still the worst show I've ever had in my
Well,
entire career.
there's a weird racial feeling in Birmingham. Yeah.
I drove all the way from Wilmington to there, last minute fill in to close the show, and I'd taken cold medicine the entire way because I was really sick. And I get in there and I try to start the show. It's full, it's packed, and half the audience is black and half the audience is redneck, just exactly like that. And as I'm about to do my first joke after I've followed 2 local stars, this girl interrupts my opening joke with, "I found a ring in the bathroom. I found this ring," and she walked right up to the stairs. I'm like, "Okay, go tell one of the staff," And then no, announce it. I'm like,
You
no.
have the microphone. You have to announce it.
And I get this thing, and then they hate me. Like, it's the worst show. But the thing about the racial difference, what I thought was fascinating, is the black people listened, and then about 10 minutes in, they slowly, one by one, got up and left. So by about 20 minutes into the show, every black person in the entire audience had left. And the white people stayed and heckled me unmercifully and I needed the money. I couldn't get off the stage. I wanted to get fucking paid at all costs. So I just went through for 20 minutes of just the meanest. They finally ran out of breath just heckling me while I'm sitting there doing the thing, counting the money I need. I got the head down pay. You ever get that? When the club owner won't make eye contact.
I never played that room. I played the room that it was before it burned down and became the comedy
Close that.
dome thing. But in defense of Alabama, I will say that there's a brand new club in Huntsville called Stand Up Live, and it was popping. And
I've played Huntsville,
Racial
right?
Harmony.
Yeah.
It's a brand new club. It just opened like a year ago.
Yeah, but I played the city. I enjoyed Huntsville. It's very quite educated. That's where NASA is
Yeah.
located.
Yeah.
About 2007, I went home and I was visiting Atlanta, and I secretly called around and I got on at this sort of new material night in sort of Midtown, trendy area. I turned up real early, and it's the place, you know, like wooden tables and stuff, and chicken wings and stuff, but you know, a mixed crowd. And so, you know, no money, no notoriety. I just wanted to test myself. I wanted to see how I match up, you know. And so I'm sitting there, and this first comic goes on. He's a lecturer at Georgia Tech University during the day. And the joke that he closed on, he said, I was in Nova Scotia recently. And he said, he says, in black people, you're great survivors, but black people could never survive in Nova Scotia. Not because of the cold. Chicken wings, $8 a pound. And everyone in the room bust out laughing, black and white. And I was like, well, maybe I had to go to England to learn how to be offended by stuff. And then the MC comes on to compare, black dude, and you know, dude I respect. He goes on
Was
stage.
that a white guy that said it? Or
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a black
A white
guy.
lecturer from Georgia.
I thought it was a black guy.
No!
Oh, fuck, that's terrible.
And I mean, like, black and white in the audience just went, ah! It was like the greatest show ever. So the black MC goes back on and he said, I like to speak to what my man just said. He said, I know when I go into like a restaurant, if they ain't got no chicken wings, they got to give me a chicken burger or something. So I got up and I said, well, I wasn't going to smoke no dope here, but I think it was, And then I decided to be artistic and nuanced and rangeful. So I did this hilarious routine that I'd just done at the Edinburgh Festival about my mom's funeral. Talk about misjudging that thing. So, yeah, that.
The other really ridiculous thing about what that Georgia Tech professor said about black people, Canada's highest black population is in Nova Scotia. That's where the Underground Railroad, everybody that escaped slavery that got into Canada, resettled in Dartmouth just outside of Halifax. So you've got a massive black population in Halifax specifically. That's such a... I find that offensive on just a lack of knowledge basis.
I misunderstood. I thought it was a black lecturer.
That doesn't make it much better.
So, well, let's talk about the tour, because I had a great personal growth as a performer this week. You know, talking with you about it, because I'm used to performing in American comedy clubs now for the last few years, and you know, you want to get that first laugh immediately. So that's how I'm conditioned, is just to come out and joke. And so watching you work every night, and then these great talks we're having on these long drives and everything, you know, you said to me the other night, why don't you, you know, just come out and be honest and be truthful with the people, and don't be in such a rush to get that first laugh.
And you know what's sad about that? What I actually meant to tell you was start slow, let them get used to your accent, and let them come to you.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it worked out.
Well, so I've never done that before. And so in Barnstaple, or however you pronounce the place, I did it. And it wasn't like huge laughs, because I opened up and I talked about the fact that I'm getting divorced and that I spent January alone in my apartment crying, and to do that in a theater, and the people were listening, and I've never experienced that before. So and then for me that was like a brave thing to open that way, and to not do my funniest material up front, and then the first three things are about the divorce, and I know it's not my funniest material, but it felt like such a personal victory for me to do that. I was like, wow, that's fucking what it feels like to play in an English theater, baby, right? So then,
the more I think on it, I don't think I told you nothing like that.
All right. Well, next week is a whole different. Next week is a whole different game plan. So, but the point of the story is, So like I'm thinking, it's great, and I've been communicating with some loved ones back in North America. I'm saying it's so great. It's not like playing in an American comedy club. Don't have to deal with any drunks heckling. And then so last night, where were we at?
Western Superman.
Western Superman.
Yes.
So I open up. I'm thinking, oh man, I'm gonna do the same opening. And then I see my wife moved out New Year's Eve, and I'm getting divorced, and I spent my January alone in my apartment crying. And this woman in the audience goes, "You're a liar." I go, "No, actually, I'm telling the truth." I said, "Reg is my friend, and the last couple of days we're talking, and he told me to just come out and be honest and truthful up front." I go, "I'm telling the truth, lady." And then the woman heckled you.
Yeah.
Which is like very that like the last thing in the world I would think would happen in an English theater, and then to give away the whole picture of the story for the listener, we find out later that was the woman that you got a free ticket for through a friend, and it's always like the family member or the friend of a friend that you get a free ticket for that's going to heckle. But
they feel entitled. They feel entitled to interrupt whenever you give it. Yeah, it's
and she was drunk.
Well,
and
turning
whatever,
up drunk
but
helps.
Yeah.
She heckled me at 5 minutes in, and we had an exchange that lasted maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And about 5 minutes after that, she was unconscious for the rest of the show.
Jeez. Oh. Did she apologize? Send you an apology or anything?
I don't know. If she did, it wasn't me.
She should have.
Yeah.
But like, and that's what I've always thought. I talked with Kash about this the other day. That like my perception of playing in comedy clubs in England is that the audiences can be pugilistic.
Yeah.
And that they like to heckle not because of they don't like you. They just want to see if you're going to capitulate or not. But there's something in the English DNA that makes them hecklers. All you have to do is look at their parliament. The president's giving a speech, and people are fucking heckling him. I would be like, "Bitch, I am the leader of this nation, and you will shut up while I'm speaking."
That's why George Washington, they were supposed to have debate live in the in Congress in the U.S., and George Washington said, "No, I'm not going to show up." And that's why the president doesn't preside, the vice president presides over the Senate, because he opted out of it, and that got sort of built into the structure of the U.S., but it was supposed to be the president there to debate his issues.
Huh.
Yeah, but Washington being the almost god that he was, once he didn't do it, America's like, well, if he's not doing it, we'll never do it.
Maybe around my 5th year of stand-up, I was doing a club gig in Cambridge. And I swear to God, the opening act, after being announced by the MC, he goes on stage and he says, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen." And a very conservative, middle-aged, sort of reserved-looking dude just shouts out, "Get the fuck off stage!" And then he goes, and immediately goes, "I'm so sorry. I don't know what possessed me to say that."
I remember
Sounds like it happened in Cambridge.
we were in Northern Wales doing a show. I forget where it was, and this guy was heckling during my set, and he ended up heckling during yours. But I said, if you know what? Just shut up. Let me get through the set. And if you got a problem with me, I'll meet you right there after the show. and I went out right after the thing. I walked right into the audience, and everybody's like, "Yeah, yeah!" Where he took off. He's scared.
Y'all remember that weekend Jungle Circuit?
Oh yeah.
Well, let's see. Well, you and I met, and one of the first times we met, I think we met in London before that, but we really got to know each other.
I was in that penis pit, Jungler's Bow one night, and there was a bunch of hand parties in, and I was very serious about my jokes. I wanted to do my jokes, and I went on stage, and this woman shouts out, "Show us your cock," and I said, "I appreciate that, baby, but it's not that kind of party." Let me ask you this. Do you go to strip clubs and yell, "Tell us a joke"?
I do, in fact.
The one response to hecklers that I always like, especially if it's a white woman who does it, is like, you go, what was it? Superman is Lex Luthor, Batman is Joker, and I suppose I have you.
Who said that?
Reg.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's funny. So you've opened for Reg. You've done the tour.
Oh yeah,
What's your perception of playing around the?
He has
British
carried
Isles?
the mantle.
Yeah.
He's done 2 tours.
What's my perception of who, what, with where?
Because I'm like so thrilled. Like these buildings are turning me on, man.
Oh.
Just going into these, and like they were, Reg and Kash were saying, we haven't even got to like the really cool ones yet.
There's something incredible about the theaters here, and you think what fills them and what used to fill them too. Like, and you see some of the posters on the wall and stuff like that, and
Those blackface photos you took?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna post them on Instagram, and then I decided not to. Let's keep it happy.
Remember that really beautiful one in Newcastle? And I was backstage, and there's like Laurel and Hardy played there, and like,
Yeah.
different like you go back and see like just these incredible iconic, that connection to history and the idea that's fascinating. And then you think about, I wonder how they got heckled. You know?
I'll tell you.
I remember when we were in Newcastle and I was looking at that Laurel and Hardy photograph, and I was like, so they played here. So I guess this means my career is going downhill now.
Because I have to tell you that this is I'm on such an upswing in my life being here, and I've really been looking forward to doing this tour all year because January and February I was in the toilet, but specifically. Ashna, my wife, moved out New Year's Eve, and oddly enough, I didn't have a gig this year. And it had been years since I had done mushrooms. And I've always known that you can't do mushrooms unless you're in the right headspace. But a comedian friend had a bunch of mushrooms, he gave me some mushrooms, and I don't drink anymore. So my wife just left me, and I thought, I'm going to do some mushrooms. And then that movie, the biopic, of Laurel and Hardy, what was it called?
Is it Stan and Ollie?
Stan and Ollie,
Yeah.
was out, and I thought, hey man, they were comedians. I always loved them when I was a kid. So I do these mushrooms. This is this past New Year's Eve. And I go see this movie, and I'm like, just want to fucking take my head away from the fact that my wife just left me, and I'm on my own now. And it was the worst movie because it was about the end of their career when they're touring in England, and nobody wants them. And I did mushrooms, and I got so profoundly fucking sad watching this movie. And then January was, I was, alone crying in my apartment. And it's great. I realized that was the flip side of the coin, because now I'm actually in England doing this phenomenal theater tour with you, and I'm having the time of my life.
When you were crying in your apartment, did you smash anything?
I live next to CBS, Television City.
You smashed CBS?
No, but I live so close to it, I can throw shit on their roof. So there might be a couple action figures on their roof.
You know how you were crying in your apartment in January?
Yeah.
Was that connected to your wife leaving?
It was, oddly enough. Yeah.
I remember years and years ago when we were young circuit comics. Glenn Wool called me up and he said, I'm on my way to your house. I don't have anywhere to stay. I said, what happened to you and your lady? She ain't my lady no more. So he comes over and he tells me the story. And he said, she had just been distant all that evening. And then we got into bed and she was laying on her side with her back to me. And I said, I love you. And she said,
The first time me and my buddy Dan came over, before I ever thought of England as a career or anything like that, we were going to stay with Glenn. And Glenn's like, yeah, come on over, we'll crash in my place, we're going to have the best time ever. So me and Dan show up, we're like 5 a.m. in the morning, and we knock on his door, and he's like, oh shit.
The long sounds you may hear came from North America.
We got in a bit of a fight. I don't know if this is going to work out. I'm like, okay. So we ended up going on the road with him on his gigs because we couldn't stay there at all because it was frosty. And that's why we ended up doing comedy, me and Dan, because we had to fill in our time on the road. We did guest spots and stuff like that, and all of a sudden we got booked because Glenn got kicked out of his house for this movie. So in a way, my entire being here is because of that.
I remember during our like 5th, 6th year, Glenn went through this phase for like a week, where when he'd go on stage, he'd sit on the front of the stage and eat an apple while he did his set. And I swear to God. And by the end of the week, he came off stage, and once again, it didn't work. And he said, "You need ass funny jokes if you're going to do that." And a monkey.
Have you ever tried eating something while you're on stage performing? It is nearly impossible.
Yeah, no.
There's something about your status. The audience doesn't buy it, doesn't go for it. Like, you couldn't eat there. Like, I haven't tried eating a bowl of ice cream once, and it just,
No, I've never. I've had audience members offer me popcorn and shit. Like, it's the worst thing.
Don't feel challenged.
Just don't do it. I'm not going to have a buffet.
I'm going to do a spaghetti.
I could do it. I would just take my time. I mean, if you're trying to talk and go at their pace, it's going to be messed up. Just walk on stage like, "Good evening, folks. This ain't going to take long. I ain't eating today." Talk amongst yourselves, briefly.
I've never seen anybody fart on stage except, I think, Carl Donnelly, actually. He used to burp on stage and make it work. And I've never seen that either. That's quite an effective. Oh, did you, have you farted?
Yes.
Really?
It was Edinburgh 2012, and I was doing a late night one-off Reginald D Hunter show, started at 11 o'clock. And I got drunk, and I was just, and it was Scottish shows, and they were loving it. And then the last 5 minutes of the show, I just had to speak to that chick in the audience that I couldn't take my eye off. And I swear to God, Kash was behind the stage, and my number 2 mic was behind me, and I looked at that girl and I said, "I know you're young, you probably got somebody, you probably got dreams and everything. I don't want much. Just want to smell your butt." And then all of a sudden I went,
Oh, no. He did it.
Nobody heard it past the 3rd row. But like 2 minutes later, my assistant Mike, he goes, "God damn, nigga, you ain't shit."
He delivered it with a straight face as well.
That's the only time I recollect doing that. Most of the time when I'm on, 9 times out of 10 when I'm on stage, stuff like needing to pee and stuff, that just takes a break. But it's just automatic.
Never had to pee on stage in 28 years. Never had to, not once. That's crazy. And even when I'm sick and I don't feel good, as soon as I'm on stage, I don't think about it. It's gone.
Well, no, that's the thing. Like Steve Martin said that in his book Born Standing Up, that somebody should do a study of comedians, that when they're sick, somehow their bodies know that you have to do the show. And that's pretty true, because I've been sick, and anytime my body like pulls it together to do a show.
My biggest breakthroughs on stage usually occurred when I'm just this side of fluid. Whenever you're just this side of tired, or just like this side of sick, you're somewhere between truly direct and honest and just slightly not giving a shit. And something comes out. That's been my experience. There's something, you come in and you're tired. Something that when you don't have your best energy, it makes you a bit more honest and a bit less concerned whether or not you're universally liked.
Yeah, I think that's very astute. Yeah.
So, were you going to say something else?
I can wait.
Okay. Because I was going to say, one thing this week has been so fun driving around. We're listening to 70s funk, driving around England, and you're talking Atlanta Braves baseball, and your favorite player, Greg Maddux, and Fred McGriff, and all that.
That advice I gave you that Greg Maddux said in the interview. Greg Maddux is my favorite pitcher of all time. He said, "I usually spend the first 1 or 2 innings trying to figure where the umpire wants it. And once I figure that, I stay out there all night." And you have to give people, when your tone is different or your rhythm is different, both of y'all need a chance to get used to each other. And it's just, and you have the power. You're on stage. If you just stand there and smile, they're going to react. And yeah, and remember to slow down and enjoy the words you wrote.
That's beautiful advice. But I love the fact that you're talking baseball with me. We're listening to 70s funk, so I feel completely relaxed and comfortable. And Pete Rose said the key to hitting is being comfortable. But I love that Kash is filming all your shows, and you're like reviewing them like the way pro sports teams review game footage, so they'll be better in the next game. So just like watching the whole operation and working with you has been quite.
Let me ask you something. In the last 5 years or so, have you sensed a reticence in yourself? Have you sensed a greater awareness about what might grossly offend and end your career? Have you felt in any way impinged upon by this current climate of we get to end your career because you said something bad?
Oh, the cancel generation. Yeah.
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 What do you mean by cancel generation?
Well, it's the people don't work through problems anymore. You're just canceled.
Yeah.
That's how.
Yeah.
We
So
deal
if you
with
say
it.
something out of tune that's against the status quo or against what is deemed politically correct,
Yeah, it's called
then
cancel.
they just don't have to listen to you anymore. They don't have to take whatever you say into consideration, even if you said this one thing. You are cancelled.
I think you'd have to be kind of half dead not to consider repercussion. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, though. I'm glad that I have to consider it to a certain degree because it makes me have to question more astutely what I want to push.
So you think it's a good thing?
Yes. I don't think cancel culture is a good thing, but I think that being challenged.
That's the benefit of it.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely a benefit to having me have to sit down and go, is this idea worth what I'm putting on the line? Because it raises the stakes, it raises the quality of my clarification, it raises the intensity of the point I'm making. I think there's a value to it. I really do. I don't think it's beneficial for culture as a whole to adopt this motif of getting rid of people that they hate, though, and cutting them off. I've never quite understood that. How people tell you, oh, you should cut off people that aren't exactly this or have this one floods, because that's the entire concept of redemption and learning is actually forgiveness, and it's very important. I mean, one of the most powerful individuals in at least I think that's affected me is Sister Mary Prejean. She wrote Dead Man Walking.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
And the idea of forgiveness and nurturing and the humanity that it gives us all is being lost in cancel culture to a certain degree. And the chance to change somebody's lost when you cancel them. I mean, as soon as you cut somebody out, you've lost the ability for their salvation. And what does that make you? There's an insanity to that I don't think is fully comprehended by those people that espouse it. So, but at the same point, I have reflected upon things that are needlessly cruel that I would say that are funny to a certain degree, and now it's like it's got to be fucking funny now rather than just kind of funny. But I don't know. I do think this is a phase to a certain degree, but I think it makes us build new muscles. Anything that forces change makes you build new muscles.
I bet Michael Richards would thoroughly agree with you.
But let's just talk about Michael Richards for a second. He was a fucking piece of shit comic. He was one of the worst comedians I've ever seen in my life.
Reg and I were talking about the other night. Because I had seen him many times at the Laugh Factory.
Yeah,
and he wasn't funny. And then he had like the best time slot because he was TV guy. He was doing like 9:30 spots, like the prime spot of a Friday and Saturday night, and great comedians. He was taking their stage time.
Yeah, when he used to drop down to the improvs, I mean, he would come down and he'd take the spot, and at first we all hated it because the crowd's, and then after a while it's like, yeah, fucking, yeah, he can go on in front of me. I'd love that. I'd love to go up and do a joke after 10 minutes of fucking puzzled silence. That'd be great. Yeah, Yeah, bring it on. Yeah, no, he's a terrible comic. He's a gifted comedic actor when somebody provides him with the lines, but he had no business on that stage other than refilling the ego for the lost sense of importance that he used to have when he was on a successful show. And I've seen people do that at the comedy clubs, and I get why they do it, but it's a really narcissistic, toxic execution of trying to refill their own validity, and it's
And I'd seen him many times at the Laugh Factory and felt the same way. And those men who heckled him were being truthful. What they said, you stink. And then for him, for a guy with $80 million in the bank, to go from zero to a tirade of N-words.
But think of the frailty of his ego that he had to be on that stage in the first place without anything funny to say. He only wanted that initial 2 minutes of applause that he went up there for. Then he'd sit and drink at the bar and be a pathetic, sad sack. And I don't have a ton of sympathy for him.
I have none.
Yeah, but
I mean, most people take up gardening, really. They don't just go up on the stage.
I bet his garden wouldn't be funny either. At least Larry David would have a funny garden.
I've been watching the Curb Your Enthusiasm, so that Palestinian chicken is the funniest episode ever.
There's so many episodes of that show that I just brilliant.
He's the most unpleasant human ever. And everything. I love it.
I agree with him so much on that show too. It's like there's so many times where, and I love that he plays himself as the bad guy, but he's making perfect sense, you know.
I like what you said earlier today about.
No, you didn't.
You lost. How did you say it earlier? I loved it, Pete. You said conspiracies your generation's Vietnam.
Yeah, I've lost so many friends to radical, absurd conspiracy theories. That's my generation's Vietnam. Yeah, in the 40s in particular, you see the people that haven't found a way to adapt or evolve or stuff like that. They've clung on to these sort of excuses, elaborate excuses, which people call conspiracy theories. I mean, they're elaborate excuses for their life, is all they are. They've suspended their logic and reason and adapted this as their basis for belief because it extends them an excuse for their own situation. And it manifests their ego, it keeps their ego intact, it doesn't allow it to deflate. And there's a lot of frustrated white males.
It makes some average powerless person feel like they have power and understanding of complex issues. And for a simple definition or explanation of a conspiracy.
And they don't have religion anymore for that. Yeah. So this fills the void. And it's unfortunate, but and a little humility would destroy the entire conspiracy theory market, but that's not coming back fast. You know, the things we don't need in our society: humility, charity.
To believe you are completely right about something that's been a secret.
I, with my average education, know something that you all need to know. Yeah, the insanity behind the ego that people have. But that's all being serviced by everything catering to us now with technology. It all plays to our own individual persona. It's not going to get worse, as Siri and all these systems that know and understand us. We're going to feel like the world responds to us, even though it's artificially created. So our sense of self-importance is going to go through the fucking roof in the next couple of years.
There was a story on the news today. I think it was in the Guardian. I was looking at it.
I think it's pronounced Guardian, but go ahead.
Guardian. The Amazon warehouse workers who listened to the Alexa conversations that they're mocking. The people in the Amazon warehouses are mocking the people talking to Alexas and stuff. It said that this gathering of information we might not be so happy about in the future when we find out how the overlords of modern technology really feel about us.
Well, it's weird how freely people give up their data, because data is incredibly valuable right now, because they're creating neural nets and systems and learning structures based upon this data. That's why you're getting these bikes for a discount everywhere. That's why everything that you're getting super cheap right now, the cost is the data. The data is needed right now to train systems, and people
Would it be better if we were paid for the data?
No, it would be better if we sat and thought as a society ethically about the laws and boundaries for what we want to be assessed and compiled and utilized against us as people. What happens when we don't have a defense against marketing? What happens when marketing is so effective that people cannot use their reason to protect themselves from exploitation from a marketing device? And that's something that corporations are getting near.
The Resident Evil's counter argument to that is free choice.
But there's no free choice.
How could we be exploited? How could we be exploited by a marketing device?
If you've got a president that you got exploited by a marketing device, you've got so much of your population in the United States that it has to work constantly, that have a limited exposure to news and media. Therefore, the emotive feelings that they get, and this is all PR is creating a false sense of emotion in people. It's not a source of information. You don't buy something because you're better informed about a product. You buy because it gives you an emotional feeling. So you've got this president that represents an emotional relief point for people that are frustrated, and he perfectly does that.
Well,
And
that's
that's
what Bernays, isn't it? You
Yeah,
bypass
yeah,
reason
it's
to
the-
get to your desire.
Exactly, it's Edward Bernays. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know from my
Edward Bernays.
my brothers that
Century of Self.
one of the Century of Self is everybody should watch Century of Self.
Amen.
Freedom Torches.
Yeah.
Brilliant documentary. But I know from my brothers that. Oh, thank you.
Hey,
What's up,
in
Reg?
Canada, is Russia Today aired in Canada?
RT?
Yeah.
Oh, was that?
So just here, huh?
Well, just, I don't know. I don't think there's anything why it is, but they just don't air it. I don't understand RT and why countries allow
I
it.
don't.
What's RT?
It's Russian television. It's like
Oh yeah, I've seen
Russian
that.
Today.
Yeah, we have that in the States.
It's like asking an
It comes on in the
ex-wife how a
States.
husband's doing.
We have it in the States, of course, man. What you know?
Right?
There's so many Russian people coming to the States now in airplanes.
Really? I just remember about 7, 8 years ago, I turned on TV one morning and it was on. And it was like, well, given how England has traditionally felt about communism in Russia and how its ally America feels about it, and I'm looking at this broadcast and I don't see a Russian motherfucker on here, how does this happen? What is, it just happened.
It's money. It's not. See, if you're ever trying to figure something out, it's easy to go into, oh well, it's this dark society or it's this organization. Everything comes down to this. Is every conspiracy comes down to two things: money and laziness. That's how everything happens. You know, lots of money here, and people underestimating how greedy people are. You get enough money at anybody, they'll fucking do anything.
I know.
And people don't want to believe that. They want to go, oh no, they'll stand up for stuff. Well, nobody has yet.
Yeah.
So
No, that was it. But then my brothers like Trump only for the fact that anything that sticks it to the liberals and the Democrats.
Owning the libtards.
Yeah, just as long as it upsets liberals and Democrats, that they could give a fuck. And
Do you remember a time before cable news? What was news like for you?
it was great. It was like we had 3 channels, the 4 if you count public broadcasting, but those 3 news networks, 5 o'clock news or whatever it came on 6, they were pretty much in sync with each other. You could
You know
watch
what?
any of them.
I've been thinking for years, I'm not sure we really need 24 hours of cable news. I don't think
it's
we really
terrible.
need that. I think we did okay with at 12 noon and at 6 in the evening. I mean, I'm not sure, yeah.
I am in the firm belief if we eliminate all 24-hour news, all 24-hour cartoon shows, everything like that, go back to the time, and I sound like a Luddite when I say this, just go back to the time where you divide up everyone's time to set times. It's like when I used to come home from school, 3:30 to 6 o'clock was my time on the TV. BBC One, Broom Closet, Andy Peters, I get to watch whatever cartoons. 6 o'clock onwards, you have the prime time, you get to sit down with the family, watch a couple of shows, and then maybe 9 o'clock your dad will sit there and start swearing at the TV because Margaret Thatcher's done something. So it's like, and practically the news was just the same at 12 as it was at 9 o'clock in the evening. It's just, I don't need the extra opinion with my news. I just want to know what's happening.
Well, that's a guy in the States. It's all like pundits and talking heads on all these news channels all day giving their opinions about shit.
Yeah,
It's like
we're
so
not
meaningless.
We're not dumb as a people. I mean, it's like we can form opinions for ourselves. Just give us the facts, and even if our opinions sway one way or the other, I don't need an analyst to sit there and tell me how I feel about it.
Well, in the States, apparently we do. Because that's all the news is all day. MSNBC, CNN, Fox. It's all people sitting there giving their opinions. And that's a lot of Americans get their opinions from shit they learned off the television.
Apparently India has it the worst. They got the most 24-hour news stations in the world.
Sounds like a Pakistani would say that.
I don't know if you guys have heard this story about Noam Chomsky, but apparently he was having trouble with his teeth, and his dentist noticed that he'd been grinding them. So he gave Chomsky a gum shield to sleep with at night. And the dentist asked Chomsky's wife to just kind of monitor him. But she said he doesn't grind his teeth at night. I haven't noticed that. And they couldn't figure out why he had, just the effect of grinding teeth. And maybe a week later, she was sitting at breakfast with him, and she heard him grinding while he was reading the Times every morning. His teeth would grind reading the New York Times. And so they stopped him reading. They made him wear a gum shield when he read the Times.
Yeah, we don't really get anything pertinent or valuable from the news in particular. Like
I think the news has one remaining value. It is your best resource, one of your best resources whenever you need to be told to fucking run. That's its best.
Yeah.
Some shit coming this way, drive 72, both lanes and be out. That's its greatest remaining value.
There was a piece I read a couple weeks ago that reading and being exposed to news about a lot of really traumatic, violent, mass deaths and shit affects the people watching it or reading about the news, and that it's possible to get post-traumatic stress disorder from being exposed to all these horrendous news stories all the
There's
time.
also
And I think that is one reason people are so stressed out and fucking...
My dad, he's constantly worrying all the time, and he's been about 40 years in retirement. His day after doing the dog and walking and stuff is Western, murder mystery, detective, and then the local murder report, which I call the news. I remember last time I was home, he was giving me junk about not calling so much. And I said, I know what you think when you don't hear from me for a while. Your mind immediately thinks that I'm in a wheelchair in prison with AIDS. And he said, pretty close.
He's 2/3 right. My father got like that too. He would watch the Fox News late at night. He's just there's no rationality left, and as his dementia set in, because he ended up getting quite serious dementia, just fit perfectly with everything. The insanity of the Fox it became his existence. Constantly fearful. He lived in a small town in Canada. There's no risks of any type whatsoever. Ended up going on a car chase. They had because he thought that we were coming to take away his license. It's just the craziness.
You had to chase after him?
No, the police. I got a testament to Canadian police. They went after him and cut him off and got him out of the car. He didn't get arrested or shot or anything. Just brought him back to the house. Like the car chase in the States, he'd be dead.
What was that There was that terrorist thing in Canada, and then the I think it was in Toronto. Where was something last year?
Oh, the incel guy.
And the cops, and I was like, I was blown away. I was like, in America, that guy would have had 78 bullets in him.
Yeah, no.
And they took him peacefully.
Cops don't generally shoot their guns in Canada because it's so much paperwork if they take it out of their holster.
Yeah.
And they have to there's all these rules. If you take your gun out of your holster in Canada, it's a fucking big deal. So they try to leave it in as much as possible. Craig Campbell used to have a great joke about when there's a big bar fight and the cops show up and the bar fight just gets a little bigger. Because they're not going to do anything other than just fight along with everybody. I don't know. Yeah, it's there's the mentality behind extreme violence in Canada is generally but we have it. I mean, with the mosque shooting was terrible that took place in Quebec.
Yeah, it's horrendous. And then the guy to film it like a video game makes it one of the most disgusting things I've ever
and then we had the
been
incel,
exposed to.
The incel guy.
Yeah, how big is the incel movement in Toronto?
Well, I think it's probably the same size there as it is everywhere.
I don't go late.
For people who don't know, I'm sure everybody knows this, but so what's it? It's like the involuntary celibates.
Yeah, so these are guys they can't get laid.
Elliot.
But they use that as a trophy.
Apparently, men who are sexually ignored by women have formed a club.
Yeah.
There's also the MGTOW movement too, which isn't incel, but it's called Men Go Their Own Way, where they abandon women, but not for other men, just to be alone. And that's a huge movement as well. Probably bigger than incels, actually.
Really?
Yeah, and it's all about women are distrustful and terrible, and it's like I feel so sad for them on so many levels. But then again, they classify me as a Chad, which is their enemy, which is a guy that gets women.
Yeah.
You know, or
Because emotionally, you are one. No, I'm sorry.
I don't find that an insult.
I don't
know.
either. I am totally.
I know. I ain't seen you in a while. You've been to college and shit. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I'm talking about.
Made my asshole lubricate. Right there. I got a little bit. I'm easily to be inserted right now.
But real talk, all of my closest friends of my own age, I think somewhere around about 40, emotionally, we all became girls in some way.
Well, this is a weird thing. Amongst my friends, 90% of them are women. You guys are one of the two. So if any, we're all women. Because gay men and women are all make up my entire group of friends.
Oh, that explains it, man.
That, what?
I mean, just when we were touring and stuff and just...
Kisses?
Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah. That explains why you gravitated to Kash a lot. I understand. No, it's not that he gay and nothing like that. It's just, he puts out an energy that's like sexual indifference, which is not, a couple of clicks from gay. Yeah. He's not a sexual threat. Like, he don't rape nobody or try to take your wife and just...
I don't see how any of those things are connected. I'm just...
I'm incel light.
Me and Kash love technology.
I know. Another gay euphemism. Let's go and get us some technology, boys.
It's your memory card.
Oh man, I'm about to download, baby.
But there's classic aspects of traditional masculine. My brother is incredibly alpha male, and you know it suited him in his generation, I think, very well. But I think it's been far more.
How much older than you?
He's like a decade older than me, and I think a transition took place where the idea of that constant competitiveness sort of is a disservice to a certain degree. It also doesn't make me happy. I don't enjoy being competitive. I don't enjoy
Them dudes that the men that go their own way.
Yeah.
Are they like a lot of them like middle aged and divorced, or are these young cats a lot?
Well, okay. First of all, visit the Reddit thread MGTOW and take a look. It's quite fascinating. I think they're from all walks of life, but there's a lot that have been through bad divorces, and then there's young men too that are on the outsides of it. And you know, there's some of their complaints are valid though. Some of their complaints, but they should be leveled at women. They should be leveled at the constructs of society and what we teach each other to value in each other, which is something that they've assumed women adopted rather than being culturally programmed for, which is probably far more accurate. You know, in a financially insecure world, a woman seeks out somebody that might have some financial security. Surprise, surprise. That's we all try to survive in the most available means.
Yeah.
And they sort of look at
Yeah,
them.
there's a lot of those incel guys have really bad attitudes towards women. It was like, why would you want to fuck a guy who like?
Well, that's what I always think.
Who looks at women as certain chattel or.
Have you ever listened to women's stories on dates?
It's classic human behavior of eventually rejecting something that you feel has already rejected you.
Yeah. That's a great point of view.
Thank you.
Yeah, they've already felt they've lost, so they don't yet. But one of the things with hanging out with women is I hear their dates, and when I used to go on dates, like on electronic dating stuff and like that, and the stories women tell about men, the behavior is just mind numbing. I think comedy teaches us to be more gregarious and engaging, and that's probably an advantage for us on dates.
We're exposed to a different kind of people.
Start a conversation, not leave a lull. Know the timing to crack a joke. Other guys, they'll sit there quietly and then, having provided no conversation, lean in for a kiss. And I'm like, what the fuck? Do you think you earned that? That's a great deal of men don't have that type of instinct. Don't have that simple read of human behavior that they think this is the appropriate time or. Yeah, it's. I think everybody should have to do a little stand-up. But then again, I see a lot of fucked up stand-ups that probably I wouldn't trust.
I don't think it's all that hard. It's really more common sense. I told my young nephew, he was asking me like years ago how to approach women and stuff like that. And I was at a little park and I said, "You see that pretty girl there? Go over there and talk to her. And on the way, while you're looking at her, force yourself to stop seeing her as a girl and see her as a person like you. And you should have some idea what to say. It's that.
That should be told to every boy in the world. What you just said, like that, treating somebody like a human being rather than a hole to shove your dick into. Oh, yeah, it's fascinatingly simple, but yeah.
Oh, it goes both ways. It's like I hear a lot of women complaining about men as if they're not persons like them. Mm-hmm. It's sort of that way of disassociating. What do you say? When you objectify something, then you can either discriminate against it or kill it. And so it's like, men do this, I hear it said a lot, and often it's human behavior. Or women do this, and often it's human behavior. And it's just...
But that's also the strata between us that they're using to get everybody mad at ourselves. Like when they go, this behavior is that. Every group, male, female, black, white, Christian, unchristian, 20% of everybody are fucking awful. And we use them as the examples to sort of make gradient decisions on all of them. And that's just, whereas we should be looking at society and go, why is 20% of everybody fucking awful? Like, rather than look at the different groups they belong to, we've got a problem with 20% are being ostracized, othered, aloned, just have created toxic environments so that every culture, every group has the same problem of allowing people to become terrible.
I think there's been a almost sort of socio-philosophical shift in the West, certainly in America. I remember growing up in the 70s and maybe the early 80s, it was sort of prevalent that everyone had some concern about either being a good person or being known as a good person. Mm-hmm. But it sort of shifted and become feeling good about the person you are.
And that doesn't create charity or kindness in the true sense. That creates this sort of viscous self-congratulatory. I wish I knew how to elucidate, but that's so.
I don't see a lot of charity and compassion in the United States right now.
That's sad though, because it used to be.
It feels like a nation of bullies. Mm-hmm. You know,
well, that's what confuses me about the conservative agenda when they talk about Christianity and stuff like that. It's like these people that want to cut back and not give these loafers and stuff. Have they ever felt what it feels like to do something nice for somebody? The charity is the most amazing feeling in the world when you do it.
Yeah,
and you expect nothing back. It's blissful. It's pure bliss.
Absolutely. And
Coco Chanel once said, "True generosity does not mind ingratitude."
Yeah, because it just feels good to help somebody.
It feels great to help someone, and that's the whole point of Christianity. And my story that I told Reg, and I did a mention on the podcast a few episodes ago, was my brother that I get along with. My family are all hardcore Christian Republicans. Last time I saw him, he told me that he's at war with the left because the left is, and they're against immigration and everything. There's a war with the left because the left is trying to advance the liberal gay agenda. And I told him, what you call the liberal gay agenda, I call the teachings of Christ. To be compassionate and empathetic and care about others. And it seems like, and I told my brother that you can't join the bullies and call it Christianity. You know?
Yeah.
And you can't sell out the country to the Russians and call yourself a Republican. So I don't know if these Christian Republicans, they're real way off the playbook. You know, they don't give a fuck about others, and as long as they stick it to the Dems, we can fucking sell out the country to the Russians.
It could provide
you know. Let's dismantle NATO. Fuck you, liberals. What?
I remember when I was 15, my mom was a staunch, hardcore Baptist Christian, fire and brimstone. I said, "Mom, you know how you say drinking is a sin?" She said, "It is." "Didn't Jesus turn the water into wine?" Exact words, "It was a non-alcoholic beverage." I got up and got the Bible. "Mama, you got to show me, Mama. You got to show me."
It's funny how they feel like in my brother, I mentioned Trump is the most godless president we've ever had, and he said that's because God chose godless men to do God's work.
Which is funny.
Which is like, so you can just flip anything to go along with your
Think of
perspective. So there's no truth. There's no reason. There's no conversation anymore.
They've all forgotten Revelations too, because Revelations basically describes a false prophet that arrives with the grand wad that doesn't follow the. Trump outlines their own greatest fear of their own personal corruption in their faith, where people of the faith will follow a false god of this type, who will lead them down a path of sin and chastisement. That's what Trump is. He's their false god. They've fallen. They've ignored their own book. And also, Jesus is gay. How many times did he ask Peter if he loved him? Like 3 times, right? 3. No. Do you really love me? No. Do you really love me? Like, you know what he's getting at. Dick sucking.
Man, sometimes
I wrote this. I wrote this. I tried to write this. I wrote this joke a couple months ago about. I don't drink anymore, but I used to really love wine. And whenever I drank a lot of wine, I would get really thirsty. So, like, if I was one of the disciples and Jesus turned the water into wine, I know at one point in the evening I would have went, "Hey, Jesus, could you turn some of this wine back into some water? Just like a glass? I'm really thirsty."
Would you still believe he was God if he couldn't? I only know how to do it one direction.
It only goes one way.
Yeah.
Sorry, kid.
If he was British, the best he could do is turn it into Vimto.
I swear though, sometimes I look at Trump and I think to myself, and here I am, I spent 20 years trying to make everything I say publicly coherent and truthful. And it's just this, oh man. And this is a personal complaint of mine. It seems to be happening more and more. But it seems consistently, there are people who feel like their feelings are equal to your facts. It's astonishing.
I would say that's the predominant way people are now, is that feelings are more important than facts.
Yeah.
I
think that's
think that's a
why
Western
we're
thing
we've
in
arrived
particular
at this
countries?
problem.
Well, I couldn't speak to non-Western places, but
Yeah.
from where I spend time, that seems to be a sadly, I think. But again, it's coming with we've got like an ego problem around the world right now. Our egos are all exploding massively, our self-importance and stuff like that.
We are AFS, all for self.
Yeah. And sense of self, the maintenance of the illusion of self. It's just I don't know. I don't know what the answer is going to be. Acid in the water, LSD. Everybody has a freaking dissociative ego shrinkage, but I don't
Let's
know.
buy a van. Let's buy an old school bus.
Where's Abby Hoffman when you need it? Yeah, I don't know. I have no answer for it, but it is a strange. You see with the comedy audiences too, like the change over 20 years in their behavior. The idea that people will say you're not funny now versus when I started there, I don't think you're funny. That thing from a personal subjective point of view to an absolute statement. In 20 years, you never hear somebody not say I don't think you're funny. Everybody says you're not funny when they don't like you. And I think that's a subtle but huge step in the way we perceive our importance inside of society. We are the dictators of taste, each individually, rather than participants in a society of collective points of view. You know?
Oh man, I watched
That's
Kash
smart.
watched the other day. We watched the
Well spoken.
we watched the recent documentary about Mr. Rogers.
Oh yeah, I love that.
And it's just I felt my core being renewed. It was just because I grew up on that, and children's television in the 70s consistently had the message that caring is cool, and we were imbued with that. And I remember I was watching Mr. Rogers' documentary and just the way he would lift people, anyone. And I just started shouting to the screen, "I'm sorry, Mr. Rogers. I don't know when I became a bad man. Help me, Mr. Rogers. Help me.
When that soft Mr. Rogers voice comes in, it's okay, Reggie. Just be nice. Just be a nice dude.
I'm just so glad.
you'd feel if someone said that to you." You're right, Mr. Rogers. I don't know why I forgot that. I think it's I was smoking in booze, Mr. Rogers. I ain't gonna do it no more.
That clip of him talking to Congress, that was just so incredible, you know?
He saved public television in America.
Yeah, he did.
The Republicans were going to destroy it and take it away. Which people who can't afford college and people with kids around the country and shit, that's PBS. I used to watch that. That's where I first saw BBC documentaries and shit. And anything of intelligence was on public broadcasting, and they were going to destroy it.
You ever watch Schoolhouse Rock?
Oh, you kidding me? I'm just a bill.
I still
and I'm
check in with that
sitting
every 6 months or so. Just, especially like, you know, if my grandma a bit shaky. Or I'm a little shaky on the U.S. Constitution.
Yeah.
What a fantastic educational, even though it
The
was very,
70s.
even though it was very propagandistic, if you take a step back from it, as it teaches a very colonial Western centric. But outside of that, it was a fantastic teaching mechanism.
3 is a magic number. I have that on my playlist. I still. Man and a woman had a little baby. Yes, they did. It was 3 in the family. Love that, man.
What about the justification
0, my hero? Come on.
for Western expansion? Elbow room, elbow room. got to give me some elbow room.
And I think children's 70s television has unconsciously probably inspired or affected my stand-up to the extent, I think, as a result, unconsciously, I think if it's laughs, but it doesn't make you think something or teach you something, then it's just entertainment. And that's what the 70s says. If it's just pies in the face and stuff, but there's a difference between pies in the face, but then just for somebody to throw a pie in somebody's face, they hold up some fractions and say, Tommy throws 1/2 of this, just something. Just try to inspire something. Just, you get better by trying to make people better. And you're supposed to be...
Sorry, I'm not sure.
I had that Siri. That happened to me a couple weeks ago.
Do you remember the Big Blue Marble?
Yes, I do.
The world is a big blue marble when you see it from out there.
Yeah.
And it was just an afternoon children's show about children around the world. And it would like go to New Delhi.
Wow.
And then it would go to like Nova Scotia. And it was kids just doing stuff. And it was just, I would watch it and I would think, oh, I'm not going to go there. Oh, they fly kites in India too. Oh, and just, I don't know, man.
Well, see, that type of programming is so wonderful, and that was the perfect sort of. There's some TV like TV's bad. There is some that changed my life like that.
Yeah.
And I always thought one of the ways we should look at television and the consumption of entertainment is the way we look at our diet. We look at it completely differently because we will eat anything as we watch it. Whereas food-wise, we're like, well, I need some protein. So we had the 4 food groups, right? We don't use it anymore. We use the food pyramid, but the 4 food groups were, you have this, you have this, you have this, you have this, and you balance it. And I think that's the same way we need to look at entertainment and TV. It's like, well, you can't just have, this base level carb. You have to balance it with at least, some sort of sensible, educative sort of thing. Something that sort of is challenging beyond your comfort zone, and then something that's.
But I think America did have that. I mean, they had the FCC had a lot of guidelines around what you can. But
I don't think it's that's strict anymore. I don't.
But a diet of just
it
sports
got infiltrated
and Fox
and
News.
rotted out from the inside and deregulated.
It's like
And quite frankly,
if they realized candy sold best and that's all our grocery stores offered was just candy aisle after candy aisle. That's the same thing as what's on TV now.
I try not to think this, but some days I think any person that has to be told that, or legally restricted and told that it is improper to beguile children to purchase sugary cereals and expensive toys, if you have to be told that, we should just go ahead and get you. It's I don't even know why it's allowed. It's just criminal.
Oh yeah.
And I just think when the new day come and justice and outside take over, all the people who did stuff like that, we pull up in the van, black turtlenecks, guns with silencers, knock on the door and say, come on, you know what you did. Come on now, I ain't got no goddamn day. Yeah.
That's
Why
after
wasn't the broccoli industry spending a lot of money on daytime cartoon commercials and shit?
There was. I remember broccoli. There's a cartoon about broccoli.
But
There's a cartoon
I
about
remember
vegetables.
because Reg and I are about the same age, and I remember cartoons. It was just Count Chocula and
Yeah, but they
Fruit
had
Loops
Cocoa
and all this
Crips,
sugar,
Do you
sugary
not
shit.
remember
Captain Crunch.
what's his name? my 10-gallon hat is feeling 5 gallons fine.
Yeah.
Now I'm just weak in the knees. So and it's a whole cartoon about eating healthy as a kid versus snacks, you know. And that would come on against the stuff. And plus, you weren't allowed to advertise certain things during kids' television too. Like you couldn't advertise toys for years. There was a law that said you couldn't advertise.
We're in Canada.
No, in the United States.
Oh.
This ended. Reagan got rid of this law.
Oh, right.
And you weren't allowed to advertise the toy that the kids were watching on the same show. The first cartoon to break that and go away from that was Mon-Chi-Chi. So there's this thing, Mon-Chi-Chi, oh, so soft and cuddly. So they had a cartoon that sold a product as well as the product advertised in the show. And that was because Reagan said, well, we don't need these protections for our kids. And it changed children's television forever after that, from that education that we just talked about to this. And then Reagan did the same thing with the airwaves. When he took away, in 1988, the broadcast concentration and equal time rules that forced people to give equal time to both perspectives when they offered a political agenda on any type of airwave. After that, you got Rush Limbaugh, you got all the extreme right-wing AM radios, and then you were allowed concentration levels of 60% in market zones, which they were limited to 20%.
I remember in the early 80s when they conned us and just lulled us about deregulation, about deregulation of the banks, deregulation of this, and they kept trying to sell it like it's going to be better for all of us. And just what a neat trick. This is what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to give myself less restrictions. Hey, all right.
Yeah. Oh, and also being convinced that government is evil, when in fact government is us. Government is all of us as a society, and they go, "Oh, government's going to wreck this." Government's Reagan's famous words. What's the scariest words to hear? I'm the government. I'm here to help. And it's like this constant deconstruction of the idea of government is a holdover from the fears of communism.
Good government is supposed to do less for people.
No.
Well, yeah. I mean, Pete's entirely right about it. I mean, basically, they listen to us about our quips, our worries, our fears, and they use that against us to get themselves elected. They do listen to us, and that's the thing. But it's like they don't.
But it's also our fault. Like when we say they, it's us.
No, but that's precisely the point. It is us.
Every time somebody brags about making $100,000 in their house appreciating in value, they're part of the system that's bad.
Yeah.
As soon as we discover these easy paths to wealth that we all exercise on a certain level at the expense of our neighbors, at the expense of the security of having a shelter for the fact that there's 15% of the population at food scarcity, yet we'll take advantage of systems that benefit us without, it goes back to the South and stuff like that. It's not them, it's us. Every time we participate in that, we're participating in all of it. So we have to kind of rationalize sort of our own culpability rather, because we'll make the same mistake again, and they'll use it against us, just like you said, if we keep calling it them.
Yeah.
It's us. So, we need to change. We need to be part of the change. Anyways, this is the funniest fucking podcast I have ever.
Man, I love it when you start just talking from your feelings, man. It's just great.
Anyway,
If Martin Luther King was white and Canadian, oh my God.
Well,
we're never going to be an us because everything now is about making others in every aspect of society.
Yeah, but we all have the capability.
You let us get in some trouble.
We all have the capability to change.
You let some weather disaster happen or some particular challenge to society, and you will see us up in a hurry.
Yeah, we need to have a big sort of thing where we all have to take. One of the things in LA, I never knew my neighbors until there was an earthquake. And as soon as there's an earthquake, we're all outside, like, oh, is everything okay? Can I help you? That's the beauty of the humanity that we all possess. It's inside of us. Every one of us has that inside of us, but we need it to be brought back out through. Maybe it's situations.
You remember the movie Starman when he's?
I remember. I didn't see
it. And
it.
that's his assessment of the human race. He said that you're at your best when you're helping each other during disasters. That's when humans are at their best.
Jeff Bridges,
yeah.
God, he's smart.
Do you remember that famous Twilight Zone episode, The Monsters of Maple Street? It won an Emmy, and in my 4th grade grammar book reader, the script of it was required reading in our class. The episode begins, middle-class neighborhood, and 5 or 6 married couples having fun as usual. And they're joking on the guy in the house because he's built a bomb shelter and he's really put time in it. And all of a sudden the alarm goes off and everybody runs away. But my man is prepared. He's got a shelter, food, water supplies. He takes his kid and his wife out there. But everybody else in the neighborhood panicking starts running to his bomb shelter. And he won't let them in. And so all the people that's lovely neighbors, they start trying to torch and blow up his, out of anger, his bomb shelter because he won't let them in. And by the end of the episode, the whole neighbor's going berserk, just riots and vandalism. And we pulled back from the neighborhood, pulled further back, and at the top of the hill, there's two aliens, and one smoking a cigarette. And one says, you see, we don't need lasers or weapons. All you have to do is turn off a few lights.
Wow.
That's great. I have not seen that episode. I gotta get
That's
through
in
that.
the old Star Trek episode?
Yes.
Twilight Zone. Wow.
Star Trek.
But now there's two aliens working from.
I might have misremembered the smoking, but they sure.
I love that. I like
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Where did the aliens get tobacco? Like, what planet is that? Do you like the new Star Trek Discovery, by the way?
I like it as a piece of science fiction. It is
Yeah.
not Star Trek, and I'm not mad about it because I understand why. Because the legality is different. People own different parts of Star Trek, and so my greatest frustration with Star Trek, like many true Trek fans, I want to see the continuation of the story in the 24th century. I want to know about the new politics then. Everything has been retro and all. It's just, I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, and then after this, what's coming out next? Picard, his own series.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
Oh, I didn't
in
know that.
retirement or something. He's not captain of the enemy, just Picard or something. But anyway, I'm sure it's gonna be lovely.
Ambassador Picard or something.
Yeah.
Bad title. You can't start a title with ambassador. That's like, no, that's sleepy. Sounds sleepy. Sounds sleepy.
Alright, how about Battlestar Picard?
Oh yeah.
Better.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's what's happening at the end? Of this? Ambassador. We
How
know.
about you pick up salsa dancing and it'd be Picante Picard?
Spicy.
Yeah. You got the alliteration going. That's nice.
So,
And I did spend like the whole first series and 3/4 looking at him going. So all these years, Spock had a black sister and he said she. Alright. Alright, that's it, just nobody. And then at the end, they came up with some janky explanation to save the galaxy. We must scrap the records, and there must be no mention of Michael Burnham. Yeah, okay. Alright.
Spoiler alert.
Oh shit, better cut that out. Cut that out.
what? Spoiler alert for what? The show?
Yeah, no, it's, Spock had a black sister. That's,
Yeah, that's okay. We can,
you know what? Yeah, okay.
that's alright. So,
Do you think you listen to shit watch Star Trek Discovery?
I've ruined so many movies for people on this show. I don't give a shit about a spoiler alert. I talk about movies, giving away the endings. Yeah, I mean, you should listen to other podcasts if.
Okay.
When my wife, we went and saw Star Wars, the new one, and when Han Solo dies, in the first one that came out, and we get in a cab, and my wife gets in the cab, and she's like, "So Han Solo died in that?" And the cab driver, "What? What did you?"
That's hilarious.
Don't get me started on Star Wars. Don't get me started on Star Wars.
Okay, so I guess we should wrap this up, Reg.
I just gotta pee.
Okay, Pete. All right, we'll keep going. And how long are you're over for a few weeks doing gigs, and you're going to university? I think that's awesome.
It's all right. I'm only over for like a week and a half more, and then I gotta go back to school. I'm actually in class right now. I'm taking a little break. I need to get on my work, but yeah, I'm only taking one cinematography class over the summer session though, so it's an elective, so it's just fun.
I love how you're always trying to improve yourself as a human, and I'm trying to do the same myself, but I wouldn't go to university classes. So
Oh really?
I'm really impressed that you're doing that.
I avoided talking about it too much in amongst anyone because I was really afraid I was going to fail, so I didn't want to tell everybody. I told Kash. I told a few people that I was going to school, but I kept everybody on the
And he's who told me.
yeah. I kept it on the down low, but because I was really scared my first year. I thought I was going to be way out of my depth, I didn't
A
trust.
world-traveling performer goes to university and gets scared.
Well, it's scary. Like, there's a lot of things that I haven't touched or
Words and books and
Well, I'm sorry, but writing essays were really hard. Like, because it's against every comedic sense, and it's against every flair base. Every time I put something of flair or engagement in it, I had to get it out. You know.
Yeah, because Ashton and I would have deep conversations all the time. We both felt that like the best comedy were mini essays, the comedy that we liked the best.
I see.
So I would think that would be like a strength for you.
Yeah, but I never went to university before. This is new for me. This is
Oh,
a new.
okay.
I'd never been taught how to formally write an essay, and I had to learn in a fucking hurry this year how to write effectively. And so I took extra writing courses on the side of my classes in order to assist me in doing it properly, and then learning the formatting, MLA, and fucking. Different Chicago style and all these different. You have to cite everything and any claim or allusion. I mean, the academic punishment for not fully explaining where you got your idea from, if it's not yours, is devastating. You know, like you get kicked out of school if you don't reference.
That's why you
it.
should have done journalism. They don't need none of that.
Yeah, but I'd never. You don't have to encounter that in comedy. You know, like nothing's sourced in comedy.
Yeah.
Just write my asshole. That'd be the sourcing every time. Out of my ass. Out of my ass. You know.
I have to say one of my enduring regrets about my formative education is that money was spent sending me to a private school, and the effort was made to make sure I was around white kids so I wouldn't be intimidated by white folks and all of that. And there was, in the 70s, the buzzword for raising children, especially young black boys, was exposure. Exposure, exposure, exposure. And my working class ghetto family pooled their money together and tried to make this for me. But my enduring regret, I believe I would have had much better grades consistently if somebody had taken the time to think, does Reggie know how to study? Let's teach him how to study. They just told you to go study and just simply know how to do it. And I would sit there and read for a while and I get kind of bored. And before I knew it, I was watching TV. And nobody was watching. And there's YouTube videos that this guy give you steps. And it's like, Jesus, if I had that when I was in the second grade, it's just, I mean, I did all right, but...
I know. I used to do homework with the TV on. I was a D and C average student. Like, no one ever told me to turn off the TV.
Well, I got diagnosed with ADHD 2 years ago, and
congratulations.
well, no, I've been struggling a long time with different things and not being able to follow through, and finally, me and Courtney had spent a lot of time taking care of her and some problems that she had. She's like, well, you know, you've got some things that maybe we should check into too. And I'm like, what? I got problems? And she's like, well, you come up and you don't follow through on things and all the time. I was like, yeah, I don't. And so I booked I went to a psychiatrist for about 10 sessions, and he gave me a test on the 8th one in, and he goes, you know, I kind of want you to take this. And I took it, and he's like, whew. He's like, and we started talking, and originally, the thing that made me go is I got my hearing tested, and I've always had bad hearing. I can't hear shit. And she goes, you have perfect hearing. And then she did another test with me. She goes, do this, and it was a competitive where you had different noises with each other. He goes, okay, you've got something called auditory dissociative processing syndrome, and that's generally in people that have autism or severe ADHD. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm in my psychiatrist's office, and I bring that up. He goes, oh yeah. And then so we did it. He goes, yeah, you're off the charts. And I was like, well, I don't really believe in ADHD. That was the other thing. And so he gave me a book. He goes, well, how about you read this and tell me how it feels? I read this book. I was crying. I was fucking crying halfway through it. Because all the things that I do, like overshare about certain things when I just meet somebody, all these heightened adrenaline functions in my life because adrenaline is how I've been treating my ADHD. Adrenaline makes you focus. So I put myself at risk. I put myself in danger. I put myself in heightened situations. That's why I chose stand-up. Is so I could fucking focus, because I need that shot of adrenaline to bring me through. ADHD evolved because of, a lot of people think because of warriors and fighters needed it. It's an assistive device in panicky situations.
I'm sorry, explain ADHD.
It's
attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Yeah, and yeah. It affects your ability to focus for long periods of time, even short periods of time. Like on stage, if somebody interrupts, if I hear a noise, I'm gone. Like That's why I need noise canceling headphones so badly all the time, because I get taken out of whatever I'm thinking about by distractions, and it's severe. And it's also the way we process information. Like I don't like bright lights. I don't like noises because I can't function around them. It shuts me down. But it's also one of the things that allows you to focus is adrenaline. Adrenaline is a fight or flight reflex, and we seek out adrenaline for focus. So I was looking back at my life, and I was looking at all the times when shit fell apart, and they're all, I'm not saying it's an excuse for it, but it's a contributing factor to a lot of frustrations I've experienced. And I wish I would have gone to a doctor 10 years ago, because since I've done it, I manage it through my diet, through my exercise. If I have to, there's a pill that's helped me immensely in classes, and it's changed my life. It really has. And this is something I didn't even believe in. And I'm not afraid of the future. I'm not afraid of I was terrified of the future 5 years ago because I didn't know how to take care of myself properly. Everything was a struggle. Everything. Mailing a letter was a struggle.
Really?
Yeah.
As you say that, I look back at my life, and ever since maybe 6 years old, I've always struggled with just mass, gross indifference. Maybe something's wrong with me, physically or something. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't hurt to there's no, if I could ask my wife to go because I thought she had an addiction problem, she went, then why am I afraid to go and do something that might make my life incredibly better too? And that's what I was thinking. It's this is a two-way street,
I'm going to go and get a full physical and work some stuff out. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've only started getting full physicals the last couple of years, and that's basically why Ashna explained that we should break up, that we could grow a lot more as human beings. And I was resistant to the idea completely. And now that it's happened, I fully see that she was right, to just be more daring in life and follow our own paths and stuff. So.
Yeah, if we don't keep evolving, keep trying, and we just turn into those people we don't like that just sit in front of this Fox News and get angry as shit.
What was the book that made you cry?
Oh, it was Living with ADHD.
Oh, okay.
Because it had these 6 different stories that outlined 6 different types of ADHD, and one of them was this guy that was just like me, and he talked about the discovery, the problems that he faced his entire life, school, everybody telling you you're smart, but somehow you never turn in any assignments or anything like that. You do well on tests, but fail everything else. That was my entire fucking childhood.
I had average grades, but my standardized test scores were through the roof.
Yeah, me too.
And my mom was like, what?
Yeah, and they didn't have ADHD when I was growing up. And when you grew up, that wasn't a common thing. They didn't know about it. But I had every symptom of it. It's just they didn't have a diagnosis for it back then. It came after I was out of school and after, I was in a system that would have caught it. So, and I didn't catch it until in my fucking 40s.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But it's been like a weight off my shoulders.
Jeez. That explains all my dropping out too.
No, you're just a bad person.
I'm just a bad boy.
Hey, Pete, the medication you take for it?
Vyvanse.
Give me something.
I don't have it on me.
I want to be smarter too.
But I just do a very low dose of 20 milligrams. Most people that have that take a much higher dose than me, but I try to balance it with physical activity and cutting carbohydrates out of my diet, because there is a correlation between high carbohydrate intake and a lack of focus as well.
Is that right?
Yeah. So to go into ketosis and do a limited sort of diet allows a clarity of thought, and it's helped me a lot. I've lowered taking my medication to maybe 3 days a week now, from where I was at 5 during school. I manage it through different activities because I'd like to grow and learn and not be dependent on something, And yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's a boring story.
That's
Sorry.
admirable.
I remember my third year as a comedian. I had this girlfriend that lived down in Totnes, and anytime I had 2 days off or more together, I was going down there. And I caught an early Saturday morning train, and there was nobody else in the car except this old English gentleman, cardigan, and affable. And we sat near each other, and he said to me, I detect that you have some sense of disdain or inferiority about your education. And I said, well, I didn't finish getting my degree. I cut out a semester before graduation, and he said, "But you are an intellectual." And I said, "Oh." He says, "A true intellectual, it has little to do with your degrees or your book knowledge." He says, "A true intellectual is someone who stays perpetually interested."
Lifelong learner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes a teacher, always a student.
Yeah. And my mom gave me that curiosity. It's one of the things that I've always been grateful for her. Like, she really, if there's ever a question, it would never get shut down. It'd be like, oh, let's find out. You know? Like, I always love that about her, you know? If there's a word or if there's something, it's like, right away, let's go to the, yeah.
I think you have to be as a comedian and an artist too, to be curious about everything and want to keep growing and learning and feeding your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do it, but yeah, I think, you know, I don't know.
I got closed off, like, there's a period in the last few years when I was just really mad and hurt and grieving about some stuff. And I didn't trust the world, and I didn't like the world, and I just stayed in, and I just hid from the world, and just, and I was public when I had to be. And before long, there was a lack of range and momentum in my set. At best during that period, I got by on technique and charm. But it was like, there was no sense of wonder, like, what might he say next? Or what might I say next? It was just, and yeah, it was nice to experience very briefly what it was like to professionally have no hope. And as soon as I hit rock bottom with that, I'm like, man, let me get unfat and find some hope.
Sense of wonder. I love that. That's such an important thing. Yeah, it's intoxifying. Yeah. You never want to lose that.
My daddy taught me early, when I was a kid, he said, don't you ever dislike nobody just because they're smarter than you. If you smart, you get next to them and try to have them make you smarter. Just don't feel like you have to be boss in the conversation all the time. I remember he used to say, sick of people at bars and stuff going back and forth about books they ain't read just so they can feel like I won. I grew up raised by old people, and when we debated or argued, it was to find the greater truth, not just to win the argument. And when I got to London and I started hanging around, I would listen to, like, you know, some of the, like, really educated people, bars and parties, just going back and forth. And I felt so dumb because I couldn't tell what, right? And I had a girlfriend at the time who had gone from Oxford, and she pulled me to the side and she said, I overheard you talking with some of my classmates from Oxford, and you think because you didn't get your degree, you're not as smart as them. She said, you do yourself a disservice. And then she paused and she said, you notice how regularly I win our arguments even when I'm right? And I said, yeah. She said, that's because you argue to resolve, and Oxford taught me to argue to win. That's why I beat you. She said, you remember last Edinburgh, I got into this argument at Leighton Live in the green room about the selfish gene, and me and this comic we know. She said, I started arguing with him about it, and then everyone started gathering around. It was like a fight. And I said, yeah, baby, you kicked his ass. She said, yeah. Hadn't read it. She said, Oxford teaches you that. It teaches you how to win, even if you're not.
In defense, Richard Dawkins not the easiest read. Yeah. That's who's the comic?
Oh, let's not.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Let's not throw anybody under the bus.
That's
here.
not throwing him under the bus.
Yeah, that's
Because
okay.
clearly
It's,
he won and he didn't get to win. We're gonna validate him.
Well, you know, this comic, he's just getting over not liking me for something a few years ago.
Okay, yeah.
So this,
Yeah. All right.
yeah, you know, but he know who he is.
All right.
All right. Well, so anybody got any other world truths or
No.
spiritual revelations?
This is gonna be edited down to 5 minutes.
No, it's not. You can edit any of this.
What do you suspect is going to be the ultimate outcome of the Assange situation, the Julian Assange situation?
I think he's going to go to prison in America. I think everybody left him to dry, left him on the hook. That he helped the Republicans. The Russians were working through Wikipedia. He was trying to get to Russia, and for the Ecuadorian prime minister to be changed, a new regime there, and he's left. They left him, where he could get dragged out of there and shit.
He was dragged out because he was messy.
Yeah, he threw some shit against the wall apparently, and he wouldn't clean up after his cats. And
Man, I remember when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, the mention of Russia used to make us feel chills, and now it's almost like the boogeyman. You sure it was Russians who did that? So the Russians hacked the DNC server, but not the RNC. That's very particular.
So I don't see a good outcome for that guy. What do you think?
Out in 6 months.
Out in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if he can go through without being murdered while in prison, I think he'll be all right for a time.
He's not being
And okay, all right, maybe not. But I think if he gets past this and he gets free enough to talk, I think he's gonna have a lot of interesting things to say. Because he's been bottled up for a while.
And then
And he's mad and he's lonely. Yeah, he's gonna spill. He's gonna say a lot of shit. I don't know.
And Sweden just reopened that the rape case against him today.
What?
Did
Yes.
they? I thought.
What?
That was in today's news.
Oh
so
my God!
So which you thought that was done, but so when America's done with him, he's got to deal with.
I think they know
charges
your
in
6
Sweden.
months. They're gonna take him through the ringer, man.
I don't know enough about it, to be honest with you, but I do know that Chelsea Manning won't testify against her.
Yeah.
And if I could just say this, Chelsea Manning looks pretty hot to me. I'll be honest with you.
It's funny when Chelsea Manning was she was downloading all that information when she was in the army, and this story I read years ago that the discs that she wrote, that she put everything on, she had labeled Lady Gaga, and she left them out. Whenever some secret shit would come, she'd just throw the disc in and download it. So none of the army dudes around her gave a shit about Lady Gaga. So oh man, Lady Gaga bullshit.
I'm sorry, man. I ain't never glanced at any photo or video of Chelsea Manning and just thought, oh, that's a beautiful girl. No, I ain't never done that. I just thought,
Really?
I generally, every time I look at him, I think, I hope he pulls it off. He's close. He's really close. He's close to looking like a girl. To me, he looks.
She.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, man. You're right, man.
Misgendering.
I forgot, man.
No, but misgendering's a thing, and as long as we're trying to correct it, I mean, she's a woman, and I like her.
I don't think of him as a man or a woman. I think of him as a fucking hero.
Absolutely.
And it's just, and I don't understand necessarily about the gender change and nothing like that. But since he's a fucking hero, if he told me he was desperately needing to have his things up, I'd at least think about it hard because you did stuff for the people, man.
I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with doing it, but I know how bad I would be, so I'd find a pro.
Don't doubt yourself.
I'm just saying, if he came up and asked me, I would have the same reaction if Noam Chomsky asked me. Would you mind? Manufacturing consent was a game changer. All right.
You didn't have to manufacture your consent.
What was the guy?
Manufacturing consent.
Doing a whole porn series based upon Noam Chomsky's books would be kind of funny.
What was the guy who exposed that the United States and everybody was over surveillance? What was his name?
The one that's still living in Russia.
Yeah.
What is his name?
You never hear anything about that guy. He must be having a great time in Russia.
He's quite brilliant.
Snowden.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Edward Snowden. Thank you.
Edward, he's very skilled at what he does, so I'm sure he's found ways to protect himself and all. I mean, his level of intellect and Assange's they're on different fucking categories.
Well, he's
altogether.
part of the system, so he knows, he understands where all the blind spots are and things like that.
But he was he programmed, he created, he was involved in the actual development of these systems and the analysis of it. I mean, the intellectual, I think he's probably protected himself a lot in order to ensure his safety on a lot of different levels. Yeah.
I think
And he seems to be able to maintain his non-biased perspective whilst in a country that would require him to be biased. I find that quite fascinating.
Yeah, you don't hear nothing about that guy.
Yeah. He voices every once in a while. I follow him on Twitter.
I think Russian gratitude is just so fucking high towards him. Come on, man, we appreciate it. And if you could look at that, like, in our system over here every now and again, it sure help make it more efficient.
I wonder if I doubt he would.
Yeah, he wouldn't give them information. But if they asked him, like, how can we make this shit over here more efficient? They go, oh, okay, you're going to need some P-34s. You know how to do that.
The P-34s. They're always those.
I'm just dropping a little nerd knowledge in you.
so long as he's not smearing shit on the pavements of Moscow, he'd be alright. He'd be alright there for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Julian Assange was smearing shit all over the walls.
Yeah, it was bad manners that got Julian Assange.
Man, if you be locked up in a room for 8 years, you'll smell some shit somewhere too, man.
Yeah, but it's you're staying in the room. You
Yeah.
have nowhere else to go.
I've had guests that
You are so
Yeah, but they
bored.
left. They left the shit smeared on the wall. They didn't have to live in it.
Yeah.
Maybe he did that just after they threw him out. He was like, let me pack my bag. I'll be back. I mean...
All right. So, in closing, is there any how do you feel about what's coming up? I mean, we got a lot of tour left.
We got a lot to
I'm
left.
excited about it.
And then we got a couple of months, we're going to kick around and do some stuff, get our podcast launched and stuff like that. And then by August, I got to start running my new show, which my current show is getting super stronger every day. But my new show feels about half written already. I'm making myself on fat. Drink sodas and nothing like that. And I'm trying to surround myself with happy people who know. I'm trying to surround myself with people who either know stuff or they're happy. So they can just light up the room. And I feel free on stage now. I think I'm going to be pretty good this year. I really do. And it's been
wonderful
a while.
to hear, man. It's good stuff.
It's a relief over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a joy to watch you perform every day, man.
Oh, man.
Really had grown as a human.
Last October when me and Kash were doing these gigs in Ireland, and he was doing a set too. I had already done my set, and Kash had never known or heard of him. And Tom had just been introduced, and I leaned over to Kash and I said, "This is a masterclass in comic timing." And the fucking jokes ain't bad either.
Is that at the Galway Festival?
Yeah. That was the set that got me. After that set, Reg invited me to do this tour.
That's where Reg
So then, like, when my marriage
was always recruiting in fucking Galway.
when my marriage was
You gotta
ending, this
keep
was
your
what I had to look
talent.
forward to. All right, man. Well, I love you guys, and it's an honor to be here among you.
Wait a minute, this is a podcast, right?
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. We could have did it 5 years ago.
Yeah, we could.
That's it. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Oh, go on, you got the flavour. No, you got the flavour.
You've got the flavor.
Tom Rhodes, you're a funny man. Tom Rhodes, you're an international comedian. Tom Rhodes, karate kick, baby, oh yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're a groovy dude. You go all around the world, telling jokes to all of the people. You are an international comedian. You're funny to everybody in every single country in the world. Tom Rhodes, I like you very much. I think you're talented and very wonderful. Tom Rhodes, you're the best guy in the world. I wanna be your friend, you should call me sometime. Here is my phone number, 603-644-0048. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're an international comedic sensation. Tom Rhodes, I like to listen to your podcast. Tom Rhodes, you're the best man to ever walk on the earth.